Egyptian troops in Somalia and the shifting dynamics in the Horn of Africa. Hello and welcome. I am Afemia Yalo and you are watching News Analytica. Last week, the AU Peace and Security Council announced the approval of Egypt's request to deploy troops to Somalia. This decision marks a latest significant development in the evolving dynamics of the Horn of Africa, where regional alliances and rivalries are constantly shifting. Relations between Somalia and Ethiopia are already delicate following Ethiopia's agreement with Somaliland to secure a navy base on the Red Sea. Now, Egypt, with its long-standing dispute with Ethiopia over the Nile water shares, is sending its troops into the mix, further complicating the already tense situation in the region. In today's episode, we will explore Egypt's recent move and analyze the historical and current dynamics between Somalia, Egypt, and Ethiopia. Egypt's decision to deploy troops to Somalia is not merely a gesture of solidarity with Mogadishu, but a calculated move that aligns with Cairo's strategic interests in the region. The Horn of Africa has long been a battleground for geopolitical influence, with Egypt, Ethiopia, and other regional powers vying for dominance. Egypt's entry into Somalia through the African Union Support and Stabilization Mission can be seen as a continuation of its efforts to assert influence against Ethiopia, as Ethiopia completes the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam on the Nile and asserts more control over the water resources. Egypt has engaged in strong diplomatic maneuvers to deny Ethiopia financing for the Gerd Dam and allegedly supported anti-government movements against the Ethiopian government, but Ethiopia ultimately managed to fund and complete the dam after a series of delays. Analysts say Cairo feels that its repeated attempts to influence Ethiopia through indirect means have not yielded results, and that it needed to take the more assertive step of deploying troops on the eastern borders of Ethiopia. The construction of the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam has strained relations between the two nations to the limit in recent years. Egypt has responded by strengthening its relations with Mogadishu after Addis Ababa signed the deal with Somaliland in January of 2024. The agreement allowed Ethiopia to have access to the sea in exchange for recognizing Somaliland's 30 years struggle for independence. Mogadishu strongly rejected this agreement and views it as a direct threat to its sovereignty and territorial integrity. Somali President Hassan Sheikh Mohammed held discussions with Eritrean President Isaias Afwerki and Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi to address Somalia's concerns over the MOU. Somali officials even requested the removal of Ethiopian forces from the African Union's peacekeeping mission, signaling a clear shift in alliances. Somalia's National Security Advisor Hussein Sheikh Ali stated that Ethiopia can no longer be considered an ally and emphasized that Somalia expects all Ethiopian troops to leave by December 31st of 2024. However, this decision has faced opposition from Somali regional states like Jubaland and Southwest State, which rely heavily on Ethiopian troops for security against Al-Shabaab militants. Somaliland, which has declared independence from Somalia over 30 years ago, but remains unrecognized internationally, has reacted cautiously to the news of Egypt's troop deployment. For Somaliland, the presence of the Egyptian forces could be seen as a threat to its quest for sovereignty, especially if Egypt's actions are perceived as favoring the federal government of Somalia, which does not recognize Somaliland's independence. The tension has elevated the standoff between Egypt and Ethiopia to a dangerous level, as miscalculation between the armed forces of the two countries in Somalia could lead to a direct and wider armed conflict in the region. The Gerd, which Egypt fears will significantly reduce its share of Nile waters, has been a source of tension between the two nations for over a decade, with Egyptian officials openly discussing military options to protect their interests. The intersection of Egypt's and Ethiopia's interest in Somalia and the AU's decision to approve Cairo's deployment has now created a volatile situation in a region already plagued by multiple conflicts. The Horn of Africa is already home to numerous foreign military bases. Just last month, Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan submitted a motion to the Turkish parliament seeking authorization to deploy the Turkish Navy to Somalia, where Turkey already has its largest overseas military base. Earlier this year, the US signed an agreement with Somalia to build 5 new military bases. Djibouti, a small nation in the region, hosts over half a dozen foreign military bases, including from rival powers like China, the US, and France, among others. Gulf states, including Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE are also entrenched in the region, while Russia and Iran are seeking entry. This foreign military presence has often exacerbated local conflicts as external powers pursue their interests through proxies and at the expense of regional stability. The ongoing civil war in Sudan and the internal conflicts in Ethiopia and Somalia are prime examples of how foreign interventions can fuel instability. The introduction of Egypt as a military power in the region will now raise important questions. Could this move contribute to long-term stability, or will it merely add to the region's already volatile situation? That is all for today. Thank you very much for watching, and make sure you join us again tomorrow for another edition of News Analytica.